Everybody, and welcome back to INTR 101. Today we're talking about critical reading. So again, terrible memes, but I want you to keep in mind that doing assigned readings is actually really, really important for your classes. I know it's easy to put them off and to be like, meh, I'll learn the material in class, but those critical readings are assigned for a reason and they really help build your understanding. So with that, let's dive in. So I want you to think about, what do you do when you are assigned a reading for the class? Now, if you're like sophomore or junior or realistically senior Kelly, you looked at it, went, okay, am I going to be tested on it? No, I'm going to set it aside, right? And that's a really common thing for folks to do. We don't always take the assigned readings for courses very seriously. And it's a bummer because they're really, really important for your classes. So the first thing you want to do when you're assigned a reading for the class is embrace it. And I know that sounds cheesy, but really consider, how is this reading helping me? Why was it assigned? And one of the key things is that it's assigned so that you can acquire knowledge, right? It helps you develop an understanding of the material in a deeper, more meaningful way. And it's also a great way for you to get introduced to new ideas and terms. So maybe your class doesn't have enough time to cover every little thing. Doing these readings can help kind of fill in some of those gaps. Additionally, these readings also help you gain more exposure to class material and material in the field. So they're a good way for you to get ideas for major assignments or projects. Maybe you have a paper where you need to examine some critical aspect of the field that you're in. You know, having these assigned readings is a great way to start. And they also allow you to critically think and process information. So when you're in class, trying to learn everything as it comes at you and taking notes, it can be a little bit difficult to take in everything and really synthesize it. But your readings for classes are a great way to sit down and really let the information soak in, really contemplate it, and really work through it. So you want to find and understand the purpose of the readings that you're assigned. So if it's a reading that's given to you before class, it's usually there to introduce ideas, concepts, formulas, give you this overview of what's coming up in the lecture. And by doing that, it's a great way to ground the lecture, right? So it gives you some baseline understanding. It gives you the basics of the material. So if you do the reading beforehand, chances are you'll understand the lecture a lot better because you have that material already sitting in your brain. Now, if you're given a reading to do after class, this usually helps you to clarify concepts and to look for connections to the lecture material. So like I said, maybe there wasn't enough time to cover every single detail of this stuff. These readings are there to fill in those gaps and to really help you get a better understanding. And it helps to reinforce the class lecture. So going back through and kind of examining this material a second time is usually easier and usually helps your brain start to remember everything better. Now, before you get started on your readings, it's good to kind of preview the material and get some questions to think about and really guide your reading. So checking out the preface or introduction will help you understand what exactly the text is about. So it'll give you that kind of first glance. And also checking out the table of contents, some chapter summaries or section headings, again, gives you a broad kind of skeleton outline of what's coming up in your classes or in the reading. And what this can do is help you develop some questions about the material. So let's say there's a term listed in one of the chapter headings that you're like, I have no idea what that is. Great, as you're reading that material, you can have that be your guiding question, right? That can be your goal. And it makes getting through that reading a lot easier. And these questions can be general or specific, right? It can be like, what is this specific term? Or it can be, you know, what is, let me think of a random class. What is Marxism in the context of Madame Bovary, right? Like maybe that's what you're reading. So really getting those better ideas and questions to go through. So when you're reading, you want to actually read with focus. You want to engage with the text. So in doing that, you can mark up key aspects of the text, you know, Definitions, examples, different connections. You can highlight and underline things that really stick out or stuck with you. And then formulas, definitions, and main ideas are good things to draw attention to for yourself. Highlighting key concepts or thesis statements. And make sure you take notes while you're reading. So if there's a topic that pops up that you're like, oh wow, I need to dive into that a bit more, it's a good idea to take a little note for yourself. If you have a really dense reading, maybe you're reading through an entire chapter of psychology, right? Like there's a lot of content there. Taking some notes as you go really helps you remember things. It's easier to return to that material, right? If you have definitions that you're taking notes on, you can quickly refer to them as you're further and further into the chapter. So an important note on highlighting, you want to make sure that you read the text first and then go back and highlight just the important things. Because what happens when we highlight as we read is you tend to think, oh, this could be important or this could be important. And you end up highlighting the entire text, which is really rough. And when everything's highlighted, nothing really stands out anymore. So read a section completely first and then go back and highlight key terms or concepts. Now, when you're reading with focus, you also are reading to clarify confusing material. So make sure that you carefully reread any material that didn't make sense the first time around. Write questions for yourself or questions that you want to take to your instructor. And then look up anything that isn't clearly defined within the text. And you can do this by using the glossary, footnotes, the internet, asking a classmate or an instructor. Just making sure that any of these things that don't make sense, you do get answers for. Whenever I'm reading something really dense, I almost always have like a Google page open because I know that something's not going to make sense to me. And I'll just Google it, figure it out, and make the whole reading a lot easier. Keep in mind that you're trying to build a foundation of knowledge. And that means that there's going to be a lot of stuff that you aren't really confident about or haven't seen before, and that's okay. That's the point of the reading. So make sure you're giving yourself a little grace. Make sure you're being kind to yourself and understanding that it's okay to not fully get something the first time through. It's all about asking questions and getting some help to better understand it in the long run. So you need to develop a system for your own reading. Make sure that as you read through something, you have kind of a consistent way that you take notes through it. So step one, think about what it is that you're trying to get out of the reading. So return to that. Is this before class? Is this after class? Why was it assigned? And then as you're reading, keep the amount of symbols kind of minimal so that you aren't confusing yourself too much. And then adjust that system to whatever it is that you're reading. So if, you're going through this reading here on the page, I've given a little legend of like, okay, yellow highlights are for terms. I have annotations and stars tell me the thesis statement. So I have this really consistent method. And then I can change this up for different classes that I'm in. So as example, if there's a list of terms at the start of the chapter, then I probably don't need to highlight them all throughout the text because I've already got that sort of glossary there for me at the start. So just like making your system consistent and useful for yourself is a really nice thing to do. Now, you've gone through, you've done your reading, you've taken some notes. What do you do next? So after the reading, it's really important to kind of write a summary for yourself. So it can be as simple as like 3 sentences just telling you the main ideas of what happened in that reading. You can create some questions for yourself and try to answer them or answer some of the in-text questions if those exist. Reread the important sections. So let's say you went through and did one initial reading and then you realized, ooh, that first section that talked all about cell processes was way more important than I thought it was. I'm going to go back and read that. And as you're doing that, you can look for where emphasis is placed. You can identify those bold and italicized words just like you would do in class. And just really make sure that you're getting the important things out of it. And then finally, make sure to rewrite your margin notes into a notebook. So if you wrote on the physical text, which you should totally do, go back and transcribe those into your notebook so that they're all in one place and neat and tidy for yourself. If you had a ton of Post-it notes, like rewrite the Post-it notes in your notebook, because sometimes those fall off and go missing, and then you lose that really useful information for yourself. And make sure you discuss the material. So connect with a professor or TA and look for, points of confusion, any questions that you might have, and get those clarified. It's also a nice way to get to know your professor or TA, right? Like using that reading as an excuse to go in and chat with them is a really nice conversation starter. And then, summarize the material to someone who's unfamiliar with the text. So if your class is really dependent on these readings, sitting down with someone else being like, hey, in 5 minutes, can I just try and tell you what it was that I read, because I need to say it out loud for it to make sense. Find a friend who's willing to listen for a couple of minutes while you summarize that material. And then, turn to your peers for added clarification. So going to drop-in tutoring or SI Pass with those readings can be really helpful. I know our SI Pass leaders utilize class readings as a way to really explore the material deeper in their study sessions. So, getting it done and then heading off to one of those can be a great way to learn more and to really engage with the overall course. And then reread with supplemental sources if needed. So if a section, even after asking questions and rereading it, still doesn't make sense, look for some other avenues to learn the material. So one is hit up YouTube, find a video of someone else in the field explaining it, or a crash course explanation of it, something that maybe just if it's put in different terms will make way more sense. And then look up some supplemental readings. So there might be a theory textbook that could be really useful. So an example for this is listed, there's this textbook, A Beginning Theory and Introduction to Literary and Cultural Theory, which ends up being a really useful resource for a lot of historians. So that could be something. If you're in an upper division math class, checking out a lower division math text might be helpful. One other thing to look for are any in-text citations. Maybe they're referencing a famous paper or another famous author. Checking out what that person did can, again, help you clarify some of that confusing material. So we talk about critical reading a lot for textbooks and articles, but there is another aspect of critical reading that's really important. And that's critically reading our assignment prompts, right? We need to figure out what exactly it is that we need to do. So when you're given an assignment prompt, say the assignment prompt for our final project, you want to do a couple of things. Number one, read it completely. Underline any key points or requirements and ask questions. So you really want to understand, okay, what is it that I'm being asked to do and how am I being asked to do it? So you want to figure out any of the background information that contextualizes the task that you're being asked to do. So I'll demonstrate this a little bit in our final project video. You can check that out, but really figure out why we're doing this whole thing. And then determine all of the technical guidelines. So when is it due? What is the expected length of it? If it's an essay or anything like that. Are there style guidelines? If I'm doing the citations, do they need to be APA, MLA, Chicago? What are the expectations surrounding that? The length guideline is really important for a lot of these. So one example are weekly reflections. So keeping in mind that there's 150 word count minimum on those is critical for making sure that you get all of the points, right? So you can find a lot of these details in the rubric that's included with a lot of assignments. And then some additional questions to consider. Are there any guiding questions that should be included in the assignment? So this is really important for, essays that you're writing. Was there a question that the professor asked that you're really trying to work towards answering? Make sure that's in there. What is the purpose of it? Is it to help you understand the information better? Is it playing into a testing requirement? Why is it there? And then is there a style that the field uses that you could incorporate into your assignment? So this is really critical for upper division classes. But let's say you end up having to write, a lab report or an essay for one of your science classes. Try using, a format that's similar in academic papers or large lab reports. to really get a good feel for how those things might look in your field. If you're writing an article for one of your journalism classes, trying out stylistically something that makes sense or really plays into the type of journalism that you want to do in your career in the future can be a good way to kind of practice those skills and get some feedback while you're a student, which is really useful and valuable. So, good old SpongeBob meme. I just want you to remember that at the end of the day, it's really important to dive into these readings, to really contemplate them and to really see the value of them and how much they're there to help and improve your overall experience and understanding of the course material. So with that, we're going to jump over to our BB Learn page, sorry, awkward pause, and just go over our deliverable for our critical reading. So I'm over in the week 3 content. You're going to go to our critical reading deliverable, and in there it's a little test. It's just some quick questions that you're going to fill in. So what I want you to do is select a reading for a class that you're currently in or an academic article that relates to your field of study. So maybe you don't have any assigned readings at the moment, find something that relates to your field, and you're going to be using that reading for this assignment. So first thing, what is the title and the author of what you're reading? I just want to know what it is that you have to do. Then I want you to tell me 3 main details of this reading. So as you're doing it, pick out the 3 big points that go into it. And then finally, I want you to dive into why was this reading assigned for your class, or why did you select it if it was one in your field? And then how does this reading relate to the material you're covering in class, or how does it relate to your field of study? Okay, so pretty straightforward. Again, if you have any questions, just let me know. I'm always happy to help over email. But with that, that is all I have for you on critical reading. I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day and stay safe and stay happy. Bye.